issue here, which the department has recognised with quite a lot of advocacy from ourselves, but we think there should be a standardised mandatory training on this that's done regularly and is accredited. Because you could, for example, see situations where a classroom assistant who might have charge of the child and control over them sees a child going to bite themselves. Biting is quite a common behaviour in children who are non-verbal, and they need sensory feedback. So you might imagine a classroom assistant who wasn't trained might say, oh goodness, and put hands on Harry and hold his hands down and prevent him from, getting that sensory feedback. But if they knew that, that might be a restrictive practice, I recognise that holding somebody might be restrictive. What can I do that's least restrictive to, comply with human rights? What alternatives are there? And we have a visual representation here of the alternative would be to give him something that he can bite on, he can choose. He can bite on it without hurting himself until he can regulate himself or be co-regulated with an adult who understands his needs. And that seemed like a very simplistic example, and I know there's some very complicated scenarios going on, but training and awareness is important. And then you have to go back a step and say, well, what are you training on? And you have to be training on standard definitions of what is a restrictive practice. So we often talk about this as restraint and seclusion, and I don't like calling it that. We don't want to restrain and we don't want to seclude where we can possibly avoid any of these things. So we need to understand what is restrictive. When am I doing something that's restrictive? How do I plan for that? What alternatives are there? And really empowering our teachers, classroom assistants, it could be the school caretaker, anybody who has got charge or control of the child and has authority to manage them might have to deal with an incident or an issue. And with Harry, because his needs are known, and particularly the discussion with Deirdre as a parent, there's open communication, there's best interest decision making, there's a plan, there's probably review of that plan. If a problem arises, they speak together. Those sorts of things can be standardised through the guidance. And again, if you go back a step from that, you'd be saying, well, where does the guidance flow from? And you have to then look at the legal powers. And I think that the legal powers and the guidance that is already in place in relation to those, in relation to that power to restrain, there's already guidance on that. Power to use reasonable force. It's using the wrong language, it's coming from the wrong starting point. It's not a rights-based framework, but teachers and schools need another different framework that's based on human rights. But the training is a very important part of that, and teachers that we've spoken to, and I think we've all had the opportunity to speak to many school leaders and teachers and classroom assistants and other staff, they really are crying out for that support and help. They want to know. Nobody gets up and says, I want to go and do a restrictive practice today, or I want to do something wrong. They're also, some people are afraid because they have done things that they're worried. Now, did I cross the line? I didn't know what else to do. What else could I have done? And they would come to me and say, I'm worried about this. So we want to help. We want to work together as best as we can and come up with the right solutions. But unfortunately, we've reached a point where that has become stuck, and we'd very much like it to become unstuck.
Just based on your first question, Harry's 14 now, isn't he? 14. And he was 5 when this happened to him, so that's almost a decade has passed. And I suppose for me it's really concerning that time has passed and it feels like we're no further forward. I think my predecessor, Kula Yasuma, when she published the Never Seen Nor Heard report, she did speak about being lost for words. I think that, I can't quote her verbatim, but she was saying that she was lost for words at the state of play. And I suppose, just to reinforce what others have already said, I visit lots of schools, as I'm sure you do yourselves. I talk with lots of classroom assistants and lots of teachers. And I think the big thing here is that they are, as Rachel has said, people are crying out for guidance. They're crying out for training. Lots of classroom assistants wouldn't even know that the guidance is a thing, or there is a draft. So there's a massive gap. And the impact is the children are missing out. And because Harry is disabled and non-verbal, he is getting treated differently than other children might in different settings.